Welcome, everyone. My name is Andres Abeyta. I'm leading the webcast series with our geospatial experts, and I'm really happy to bring with me today David Foster, who's the co-chair of the Geospatial Working Group for Society of American Military Engineers. Hey, thanks for joining us again, David.
Andres, thanks for having me again. This is a great opportunity to really spread the word about how important geospatial information and services is to our nation, both in the Defense Department as well as other agencies.
Well, that's great. That's the whole purpose of these videos, is to spread education to a variety of people who can think about elongating their career paths and diverse uses of geospatial techniques and tools. And that's part of what we do at Bootcamp GIS, in which I'm the executive director, trying to bring more educational tidbits to more people around the world. So today's topic is to really think about what is the potential by somebody getting out of the military and going on and doing other great things. And David, I know you know lots of people that have done that.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we are in a target-rich environment when it comes to geospatial expertise, or folks that have the education and training. The Department of Defense, the federal agencies, private industry, all are hungry for the experience, the real-world experience, the technical expertise, and the leadership qualities that our former service members bring to the table, and that is unmatched, really, by any other form of track of taking a traditional education track. You see guys going into the university coming out with a bachelor's degree in geospatial information and services, but they can't touch what a 12 Yankee Army geospatial engineer or a 3-5 engineering from the Air Force, what they do every day, because they've been deployed for 24 months and 12-hour days. They're just cranking away, making product and analysis and really affecting the lives of the soldiers and airmen and sailors and Marines that they're serving. So again, you stack up a specialist with 4 years of experience, real world applied, versus a student who, good for them, they went to college, but it's all been in the classroom, not applied. In between, I guess, their beer drinking. I would much rather have a service member on my team.
Yeah, the cool thing about a geospatial career is it can be so diverse, and you can go in many different directions, whether it's for a nonprofit or government or private, and be in different places in the world, in the office, outside the office. But our focus today is to talk about how that transition goes from possibly the military into these different avenues. Let's start with yourself. What was your role in the military, for those that don't know, and then how did it look and feel when you started thinking, hey, maybe I could be a consultant or get hired to do more of this?
Wow, that's a great question. Very quickly, started off enlisted as a military policeman, thought that would be my career, got a bachelor's in criminal justice, and then the Army made me an engineer officer. A little bit later, I ended up going and doing an assignment with the UN, where I leveraged, again, not me personally, but coordinated, led, and facilitated integration of data coming in from multiple sources from around the world, as well as in Western Africa, as a part of the 2011 Liberian national elections, their first free national elections since the Civil War had concluded. So heavy focus on security of the votes, and personnel. So soon thereafter, retired and joined private industry, where I spent 5 years supporting the Air Force GeoBase program, so all their built and natural infrastructure worldwide. Again, not as a technician, but as more of on the policy, education, training, the leadership side of the program, not the technical side. And that turned into an opportunity to start my own consulting business. And so that's what I've been doing ever since. I've been in private myself in business for 3 years, and it's been an exciting ride. But as you can see, started off as a military policeman and now a consultant, doing great things, I believe, that are important to our nation's security. So from combat boots to loafers and a tie.
Yeah, so it's easy to see that you've continued that path after leaving the service and just continue to be very productive. And there's going to be a lot of people on this call that want to follow that same path and why they're listening. So maybe you can talk about, how easy is that? Do you know of other people that are, about to leave the service, and what do they do next? Do they go look at a website? Do they come and talk to you? Do they join SAME? Well, what is it that were some of those triggers and that got you to find some opportunities?
I believe it's over 80% of people get jobs from people that they know or through their network. So someone else knows somebody. My first opportunity outside of uniform was exactly that. I was doing the traditional look online and go do all these not very fun things. But it's really the relationships that you built over many years where people are, it's your network.
Well, you have hit on the key phrase, or the term there is network. So the military is probably the biggest network there is. So there's going to be people you worked with that may be along the path ahead of you that would be great people to connect with.
I am going to actually talk about a few key people because of the positions they hold now, and kind of saying, what's the art of the possibility, right? Where can this go, my career? But I mean, I know people that are working at the Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson International Airport. They're the GIS manager or one of the geospatial analysts at the largest, busiest, at least for a number of years, it was the busiest international airport in the world. And they're doing everything related to not only flight operations, but ground operations and what's the retail value of that store at the specific location inside of the building, right? Heat maps. And so they can charge rent at a higher level for, the best place in the terminal.
Yeah.
So I want to give some examples. There's Jason Fesser. He's a retired warrant officer. He's the young gentleman that was at an E4 that put his arm around me when we were with the engineer brigade in Germany, where we ended up deploying to Kosovo together. Started off enlisted, became a warrant officer, ended up being the advisor to the Army GIO, or the military advisor to the Army GIO and director of the Army Geospatial Center. He started his own company with a couple of his buddies. So there's a bunch of warrant officers that got together and said, hey, we can do this and we can continue to support our nation, continue to defend, the Constitution of the United States against, enemies both foreign and domestic. And there they are in industry, knocking it out. We've got Mr. Chris Vaughn. He's actually the FEMA Geospatial Information Officer. He's a Marine Corps veteran. His career path is a little bit different, but holy cow, he's the one that is actually out there helping facilitate and coordinating, 50 states, 3 territories in the District of Columbia, so that our nation can respond as a part of the National Response Framework to natural disasters, both man-made and natural. Incredible story with him. We've got Mr. David LeBranch. He's a retired Army engineer officer, typical engineer officer, multiple assignments, not really much to do with geospatial, but holy cow, he ends up at West Point and he becomes a instructor of geospatial geosciences. Well, then he goes to private industry, works for a few years, and then ends up being selected as the OSD, Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment, the Defense Infrastructure Spatial Data Initiative Director. He's a GIO for all things built natural infrastructure for the business enterprise for the Department of Defense. So every installation around the globe That's his program that he runs. Fascinating. And then there's Mr. Scott Ensign. He is the Air Force Civil Engineer Center's GIO and also the Air Force Geo-Based Program Manager. 20 years enlisted, fascinating career, did all kinds of cool things around the world in places that most of us wouldn't even want to go. Spent his time with the Air Force Real Property Agency and did some work there before actually going to the Air Force Civil Engineer Center, where he was selected to be the AFCAC GIO. So the tracks are different, but what we all share in common are leveraging the experiences that we had, using our network, and then, for the things that are sought after, which are our experience, our technical skills, and quite frankly, our leadership abilities. It doesn't have to be like macro level, but at the small level of learning how to facilitate teamwork to get the job done.
It's interesting you mentioned all those names, and I've had interactions with all of them, multiple interactions, and I didn't know any of them were former military. They're at the conferences and giving the presentations that I go to, and I just think of them as, geospatial leadership people, and I didn't realize they came from military service. You mentioned Chris Vaughn of FEMA. One opportunity for people is, as you try to find your way into maybe one of these federal civilian organizations, FEMA's a good example. They have a program where it's almost like the National Guard. It's on call for disasters, and you, with your military background, would have an advantage, I think, preference to get in as an on-call geospatial specialist to be able to be called in the case of a hurricane to work on geographic information. And then those particular positions then are have preference for full-time federal civilian positions, and when FEMA needs more staffing just like that. So that is how you kind of can get in the door with some of these federal organizations that need this type of skill set, the military and organizational training that this audience has. And I suspect that you might even know some others, David, that there's those types of programs with some of the other agencies as well.
Well, you just touched on something about veterans preference, and that goes a lot for government employment. But the one thing we also, which is true, the one thing we also didn't talk about is security clearances. And that if you're doing geospatial engineering, you're gonna have a security clearance. And so, again, those are sought after, right? If industry's working with government and they've got a secret, top secret, or higher, clearance requirement, a lot of times the soldiers, airmen, sailors, and Marines getting out of the military bring that with them.
All right, so that's a good array of people that give excellent examples of really great success stories. Hopefully that's inspiration to our audience. Can you think of any career preparation training that they're currently in the military or even after they get out that helps add an accelerant to that path to high-end GIS skill sets and leadership?
No matter what choice you make, you're still responsible for your own career progression and your own education. And that's where it really gets difficult for folks that are in the military. Where do they go to get additional training? So there's a gap, I believe, of easy to access education that's timely, relevant, and compelling, right? Most of the time you see things that the courses were developed and there's no actual application, so there's nothing that goes from flash to bang, okay, you're teaching me about this, but how does it apply to installation management or emergency management or contingency operations or humanitarian assistance, disaster response, or occupational environmental health or logistics or security? And there's no application. It just says, file open, do these steps, and then you're going to get a polygon, and that polygon has attribute data. And okay, great. But what does that mean? How do I apply that to the real world? I think that's really where there's a gap in opportunities for people to learn. And from what I understand, that's where Bootcamp GIS is stepping in many ways.
All right, I'm going to tell you a secret. There's definitely a wide gap. Does anybody on this call know that the government's systems usually are older and slower than in the commercial sector? It's true. And it's not just the government, any large institution. So let's just take universities, for instance. They tell me it takes about 3 years to get a course on the catalog and a person to take a class. There's just so many accreditation and approvals required to do that. And so think about that timeline, and then the timeline of how tech evolves. Heck, 3 years, the tech has changed. So it's impossible for large institutions to keep up with what's really going on with the latest implementations of technology. So that's where I would really encourage people to take the mindset. I give this talk called the Spotification of Education. You can't say, hey, I took this class in the military and now I'm good. I took this class in college, now I'm good. Got this degree, I'm good. It's got to be this ongoing feed to you. And there are some very agile places to go get good content like that. If you want to learn in the cloud, go to AWS or Google. If you want to learn in data science, there's data science boot camps. And then for us, we're a geospatial boot camp that's really teaching from industry experts how to do really current processes with the latest technology. And then when it gets stale and old, we toss it out or update it, and always creating new classes. So that's kind of the new mindset of the learner, that you need to be out in the tech sector and to follow the paths of any of those people that you described, David. They have to be ongoing learners and talking to people and learning new technology, learning architecture, learning the business. So it's not even just a piece of software like Esri GIS. You got to learn these other aspects that make you a mature articulator of how to create solutions.
Well, and that's really interesting because, the Air Force, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force has got a new strategies: accelerate change or lose, right? And he's applying that to many things. But I think that's what we're talking about right here. You got to accelerate education. You got to accelerate training. You can't let it get stale. And it costs time and money. It's not easy. And that's why I think what you're doing with these micro sessions and, having industry subject matter experts, people who have gone through and have had those experiences, and turning around and sharing those experiences with others. It's a great model. And, maybe the DoD will catch on to that model. I'm sure that there's something out there that's similar, but I'm not sure that it's caught fire yet. So really like the idea of accelerating educational change.
All right, well, thank you. Our time is done for this particular podcast. Appreciate everybody attending, and I hope it's given you all some ideas on how your career path doesn't end once you exit the military. It can be really a fertile place with your experiences, and if you have the right mindset, connect with people, and keep your own ongoing continuing education progressing, then you'll be in great shape. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you on the next podcast.